Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to Meet Your Neighbours. And I have a very special guest this week, one that has been requested by the community, and I'd like to introduce to you to Mr. Strontium. How you doing, Strontium?
I'm doing well. Glad to be here.
Thank you for joining us. You were the viewers' requested participant, right? So they absolutely love you in the community.
I don't know why.
Stranger things happen, man. Stranger things happen. So you're in North America somewhere. Can you tell me roughly where you're residing?
Basically, I'm sorry, you broke up. Basically, I live in Western Tennessee, which is like right in the middle of the southeast of the country.
Nice. And is that where you grew up, or have you kind of gravitated to there?
Pretty much. Unfortunately, I was born in Florida, but my parents had the good sense to get me out of there. Sorry to anybody listening who's in Florida, but you know what I'm talking about.
I think I spent the sum total of about 2 or 3 days in Florida when I was over in the US. So it was hot.
Oh, my apologies.
Hot, humid, and full of old people. But anyway,
they call it God's waiting room for a reason.
Oh dear. I think today's discussion, and I spoke to Strontium a little bit earlier about this, but it's going to be a little bit different today because I want to get Strontium's kind of perspective on a couple of things. So, how long have you been gaming for? First of all, Strontium.
Pretty much as long as I can remember. You know, when I was a really small kid, my parents had like, an NES, Nintendo, and I remember playing like Duck Hunt, Mario, and all that. But like my first proper console that was mine was the original PlayStation, and I remember the first game I ever played on it was the first Spyro the Dragon. So that's about how long I've been at it.
So the little grey one with the disc that went in, I remember it well actually.
Yes.
We actually have a photograph of my youngest son playing that with one of those TVs that have the massive backs on them, the very square ones.
Oh yeah, the original like projection tubes.
Yeah, those ones. So yeah. So what is it that you enjoy about gaming?
Probably just the escape and the worlds that I'm allowed to explore with them. Though, truth be told, I'm very picky as to what games I play. I wouldn't necessarily call myself a gamer because I buy like one game every 2 to 3 years, if that.
And so, what kind of games are kind of your preference as such?
I like role playing games and I like first person shooters, but saying that. I'm very picky about first-person shooters because, for the most part, they seem to be mostly just different versions of each other.
Yeah. So, what are you looking that is a little bit different, or the depth you're looking for? Is it more the storyline, or what is it?
It just depends, honestly. Different games have different qualities. Like some games are so good you don't worry about the story, like with Fallout 3. The story's rather rudimentary, but the gameplay is very good, and the setting is, fantastic.
And so, how long do you reckon you've played Fallout 3 for? Long time?
Well, if I had to guess, at least 1,000 hours.
Wow.
And that was like, playing it for a few months, putting it down, coming back later, playing it for another few months.
So how to get your perspective on, have you played Fallout 4?
Which one? I'm sorry, you broke up.
That's okay. Have you played Fallout 4?
Oh yes, absolutely.
So how can I get your perspective on the transition from Fallout 3? I guess New Vegas was next, and then Fallout 4. With that kind of new way of gameplay with Fallout 4, what's kind of your preference, and can you give us perspective on how you feel about that kind of transition and how, because Fallout 3 is a much older game and it was the best they could do at the time, and then obviously things progress. So
yes, absolutely. For the most part, Fallout 4 thoroughly vexed me because they put a lot of effort into things that I wouldn't have even imagined doing. Like, obviously, enemies like Sentry Bots or the Death Claw, that they needed an upgrade. They weren't very good looking in Fallout 3 to begin with. But then you have them like investing actual time and effort into redesigning things like a Nuka-Cola vending machine or even the Nuka-Cola bottles, which to me just seemed like a waste of time. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you had an established model, it was iconic, easily recognizable, but they decided to change it too. And I think that goes into modern gaming, like in the industry. They perceive that anything new equals good.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you sell a product. You just make it as shiny as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And like, for example, with the pre-war segment at the beginning of Fallout 4, it really didn't add anything to the gameplay. It's not like Vault 101 where you had enough time to interact with for that the wife to really develop an emotional attachment with her
Yeah.
so that when she died you actually felt something. Unlike, when Liam Neeson's character James in Fallout 3 dies at Project Purity, you
Mm-hmm.
actually kind of felt something because you grew up in the vault. That was your dad. You had to go out and find him.
Yep. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. No.
So the pre-war aspect of Fallout 4 just kind of came off as a gimmick, something bright, shiny, and colorful they were able to like use in the trailers to sell copies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. It's an interesting perspective. So I guess you say you're a little bit picky about what games you play and you don't play. How do you arrive at that point where you say, okay, this is the game for me? What kind of tools do you use? What kind of research do you do? How do you get to that?
It's mostly YouTube. I definitely watch game reviews, but like I can remember when the first Dead Rising game came out. Um, I watched a lot of gameplay footage. Like I think that was before Let's Plays really took off on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
But you'd look up a video, you'd find decent gameplay footage, and I'd watch hours of it, just drooling over it the way we used to look at articles in Game Informer magazine,
Yep, I know. I remember.
and that that more than anything really informs my decision whether or not I'm going to buy a game. Unless the exception would be when Red Dead Redemption 2 came out. I knew it was going to be a good game, so I just went ahead and bought the sumbitch.
The horse simulator. Yeah.
Yeah, the rootin' tootin' cowboy shooting number two.
But it's interesting that you say that because, and it's one of the things that I'm sort of it is a bugbear of mine at the moment as far as the gaming industry goes. I don't know if you feel the same, but Red Dead 2 came out after they'd spent a long, long time developing it. And I know Borderlands 3 is coming out and they've spent 6, 7 years developing it. And I just see the industry at the moment just trying to churn versions out of games and not taking the time like they did years ago. They weren't on a schedule years ago. I don't know how you feel about that, but I don't think they're taking it nearly enough development time in games these days because of the nature of competition.
Absolutely, they try to crank out the flavor of the month as quickly as they can.
Mm,
Like with Fallout 76. Now they've all of a sudden decided, hey, we're going to do battle royale. Hey, fellow kids, come play our game.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think with 76 is a good example where um, they have, and it. I'm not going to beat down on Bethesda. I know you will, but I won't. But I think it's a good example of what's trending in the industry, where the game development companies are putting their games at about, I would say, 70 to 80% completion, and then they spend the next 12 months tweaking and refining and patching and bug fixing. Although Fallout games are renowned for bugs, let's be honest. But
Well, yes, they don't call them Bugthesda for nothing.
but I don't think it's healthy. I really don't. I don't think it's a healthy situation. But I think it's become the norm now because people are buying their games.
Well, yeah, they do what we let them get away with.
That's
It's partially our fault as consumers. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so picky when it comes to what media I purchase.
Yeah, and I get that, and it's good to hear you say that YouTube is basically your go-to kind of media source, because I think a lot of us in the community that have YouTube channels, that is the reason we have channels in the first place. First of all, I think most of the Fallout people was just to share the builds, but secondly, I know for me, I like to try and put as much variety in games up on the channel as possible because I do the same as you. I use YouTube to make a determination on what game I'm going to play. next, and it is a very good source of kind of infinite material, if you like, to make that kind of informed decision. So,
Yeah.
is there anything any games at the moment that are kind of piquing your interest?
I'm actually, you'll be shocked here. I'm excited about a game, but supposedly next year they're releasing a remaster of All Humans, which was one of my favorite games growing up.
Hmm. Okay.
That's the one where you're like the little gray man in the flying saucer, and you literally just destroy humans.
Nice. Sounds all right. So, how old would that game be?
I will have to look it up real quick, but that won't take but a moment.
I know that Boulder Gate 3 or something, I think it was called Boulder Gate 3 is coming to consoles now, which that is a big PC game that I played. Oh god, it would have to have been in the 90s. So seems to be there is a lot of these games that are being remastered and then being used for actually being given access to consoles. So
And it's really an untapped market. Like, look how well the Spyro trilogy did when they remastered it.
yeah, I agree. I totally agree with that.
And for the record, Destroy All Humans came June 21st, 2005.
Mm. Wow. So it's been a while. So it's over 10 years old. So interesting. I wonder what prompted them to remaster or redo it.
I'll give you a hint. It's called Money.
Money. I think it's funny though. My nostalgia seems to be the thing. So I know you probably don't play Call of Duty, but Call of Duty's latest effort, which I did not buy. It's the first one I haven't bought in 11 years. All they've done is which is Black Ops 4. All they've done is they've grabbed all these nostalgic maps from previous games, shoved them in one game, and went, "Look at this!" And it sells. It sells because people are attached to certain games and certain things within games. And yeah,
nostalgia is a powerful drug. It really is.
yeah, I know. It's funny though, Strontium. Sometimes you go back and play games, and I bought a whole. There is a game compilation on Xbox, which is a Sega compilation. Forget exactly what it's called. So I went and bought that and started playing Golden Axe and you know what's the little hedgehog guy, Sonic. And,
Sonic.
Sonic and all these kind of other games, Wonder Boy and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, some of them fantastic. Some of them I'm like, not like what I remember them being, you know.
Yeah, they don't stand up. Your memory kind of fills in the gaps between the pixels.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's a double-edged sword. So the gamertag Mr Strontium, where does that come from?
Well, originally my YouTube name was just some throwaway crap that was which is a reference to the show Invader Zim.
Mm-hmm.
But when I decided that I was going to have me a big proper YouTube channel and I was going to make $1 million like PewDiePie, I decided, well, I'm going to try to make my money off of Fallout 4. So I better have a, if not a nuclear theme name, something that evokes radioactivity. So I went with Mr. Strontium.
Nice.
And that's why my avatar is a gas mask and a top hat.
Fantastic. Talking to your YouTube channel, it's been a while since you've done anything with that. Is there a reason why you've stopped uploading content? Is it just the creativity is not there, or it's just you're doing other things? Or?
I really just got tired of playing Fallout 4, and as I've said, someone who doesn't really buy a lot of games, I knew I couldn't really make a viable gaming channel out of it, so I just let it die on the vine.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. What motivated you in the first place to put it together?
Well, like you said about a lot of the people in our Fallout community, it's fun to build. It's more fun to build something and then share it with others.
Okay, fantastic.
Kind of gives you a purpose to what you're doing, as opposed to just, I'm just putting up these walls for my own gratification.
Mm-hmm. And did you do any build videos on your channel? I can't remember. I did have a look at your channel the other day, I must admit.
That's pretty much all the channel is.
Okay.
You know, little raggedy shacks, a few creative things, a few concepts, but mostly just little shacks.
So your preferred way of playing Fallout? Because I think I noticed some survival. Do you have some survival videos? I think up on your channel. I think it was.
I started a series that was in survival mode,
Hmm.
but I never finished it.
Is that your preferred playing style, or do you just prefer to go normal playing style?
Um, for the most part, I used it as a post-apocalyptic building simulator because anytime I tried to go out and explore and enjoy myself, the game would crash or it would
Mm.
glitch out uncontrollably, and it would remind me why I hate it so much. But
Yeah.
if I just stay in my little my little space, build my shacks, things tended to go pretty well, and I had fun.
What is it that you got out of building though? I know you're a creative person anyway. I know you do other kind of models and stuff like it. Was it that kind of creative process? Was it something else?
A lot of it was just the setting and the aesthetic.
Hmm.
As far as like science fiction goes, my favorite subgenre is the post-apocalyptic.
Hmm.
So, like especially with Fallout 3, that just tickles my fancy. It's right up my alley.
Fantastic. Are you a fan of the Metro series by any chance?
I am. I know it's supposed to be like survival, but I felt like they didn't give me enough ammunition, accomplish the tasks that they
Hmm.
set before me.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Interesting because that is kind of post-apocalyptic, I guess, as well.
I I think it's a fantastic series. I just haven't touched it in quite a few years.
Yeah. Okay. The new one's quite different. I mean, I put some gameplay on the channel, but it was interesting what people will watch and what people won't watch. And you would think that with Fallout being post-apocalyptic and Metro kind of the same theme, that there would be a transition. But I've spoke to a number of gamers, and some are like, "Yeah, I love it," and others are like, yeah, "It's okay." So it's interesting.
Uh, the latest one has too many trees in it for my taste.
Well, I wasn't going to mention that, but you mentioned it.
Well, we've got to have a little tree talk. That's my shtick.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Why do you think you get the Why do you think you get the nickname Mr. Salty? By the way.
Well, I think I actually started that just because there's a defense mechanism I came up with in high school that if I make the joke on myself first, it's not nearly as painful, and then other people can't make hay out of it. So I was actually the first one to call myself Mr. Sodium.
That's fun. Is that a kind of mechanism in school though? Humor? I mean, to get through high school, was that for
Yes,
you?
because I'm not a very big person. I'm only like 5'6",
Yep.
so especially in high school, I treated it like prison. I just pretended to be crazy, but I also used humor, and that's why I never got beat up or suffered a single swirly.
Nice. It's funny you should say that because I've watched a number of people over the years, and top comedians actually. And my fellow countryman comes to mind, Mr. Conley, Mr. Billy Conley, and
Oh, Billy.
he tells a very similar story about how humour got him through those dark days that were school. Um, and how his teacher told him he'll never amount to anything, and because he was just always clowning around. So
Hmm.
um, it's and I think there's been a number of guys over the years. I think actually Robin Williams was another one that told a similar story about that. It's just he was a small kind of guy, so humour was the thing that got him through. But it's a good mechanism.
It disarms people. Oftentimes, they don't expect that someone's going to make them laugh.
Yep. Yeah. So, is there a one particular video game series that you would say is your favorite, head and the shoulders above anything else?
Hmm. I would say Fallout, but I only liked Fallout 3.
Hmm.
I'll admit that Fallout New Vegas had a superior story, but
Hmm.
I didn't really like the setting. So if we're going to go with series, I'd have to say Red Dead Redemption.
Okay. And what is it about Red Dead that you enjoy?
Well, the Wild West aesthetic is really good. Other than post apocalyptic films, I do really love a good Western, which, when you look at them, there is a great similarity between the Western genre and the post apocalyptic genre. Because, like in the Wild West, you have people, living in these rundown gray wood buildings,
Hmm.
living under the bearing sun that's just, cooking everything to dust. So there are very, noticeable similarities.
Yep. Yeah, I guess you're right. Um, so I have a question for you as a consumer of YouTube. So what is your determination? I mean, you said you're a bit picky about games. You do a lot kind of looking around YouTube to try and determine what game you're going to buy next. What is it you look for in a YouTube channel that would make you subscribe to that channel?
Well, there's two gaming channels that I sufficiently enjoy that come to mind. One of them is a fellow named General Sam,
Hmm.
and I like him because he's a vulgar asshole, for lack of a better description. And you never know what he's going to say,
Yep.
and he plays a wide plethora of games.
Yep.
So, and it's never really to me a good gaming YouTuber. You don't really care what game they're playing. You more tune in for them,
Yep.
and that's definitely the case with General Sam.
Hmm.
And that's also the case with another channel called Many a True Nerd that I really like, and it
Hmm.
helps that he has a very very posh London accent that oftentimes becomes adorable. Two, but a third fellow comes to mind, and his channel's called Call Me Kevin.
Yep.
He's a plucky little Irish fellow, not the thickest of Irish accents, but noticeable.
Yep.
And he's another one of those where it doesn't really matter what he's playing. He's just a joy to watch and listen to.
So he's in. So entertainment is basically what you're saying. That they're entertainment. They're funny. They just get in. They're not. Some of them. Some of these YouTube channels, the bigger ones, are very commercialized now.
Oh yes.
Whereas by the sounds that these guys are just down to earth. They get in. They play. They talk to you. It's.
Well, I will point out Many a True Nerd was one of those lucky chosen few who got a free trip to the Greenbrier to play Fallout 76. So he's a bit of an influencer, but the other two, they're definitely not very commercial.
Mm, nice, nice. So everybody that's listening to the interview, there you go. There's some pointers for you. It's like I think it's like Epic said a couple of weeks back. He said, "Yeah, if you're not a good gamer, you better be damned entertaining." And I think it's probably right.
Yes,
You can
because
kind.
they play a lot of games that I would never even bother to play, but
Yep,
the fact that they're playing them, I can bear to watch it.
yep, yep. I watch two guys called who You Always Win, and they're the same. They just get on and they're complete goofballs, but you can tell they're having so much fun um,
Yes.
playing the game. And yeah, one's an American, one's a Canadian. So
Hmm.
so
There's another fellow that is like ridiculously fun to listen to. He's another Brit. He goes by the name of Soviet Womble, and he plays all kinds of things, but
you know,
it's more about his personality and the humor that comes from that.
fantastic. You know what a wombo is, don't you?
Yes, it was a British campaign, wasn't it, in the '70s
Yeah,
about recycling?
yeah. Well, it was no, it was actually a kids show called the Wombos. And
Huh.
there were these little creatures that lived on Wimbledon Common. You should Google that one, man. You'll find.
No, I remember looking it up. It was created to promote recycling, but
Yes,
yeah, it's
that's
like a
right.
children's book, and then it became like a TV show.
Yeah,
And
that's
wasn't
right.
it puppets or was it animated?
Yeah, it was kind of. It's hard to kind of describe, but yeah, it was kind of models, Orinoco, and they actually one of the first albums I ever got when I was a kid was the Wombos' Greatest Hits. So they actually done.
Oh,
Mike Batt was one of the guys that I think he was the producer of the show, but going back, but yeah, they done a whole album of songs too. But
oh wow, that's
yeah,
kind of funny. I think back, like some of the first albums I ever had as a kid was like Bruce Springsteen's "Born in the USA" and Pink Floyd's "The Wall."
Well, there you
I don't
go.
want to be one of those millennials where it's like, oh, I have such good taste in music. Let me dust off these 40-year-old bands to impress you with.
Yeah, well, do you want the original album? Yeah,
Well, to be fair, I have Breakfast in America on vinyl, so
yeah.
everybody shudder and be amazed.
You don't want to know what I've got on vinyl, man. I used to be a DJ when I was a 14, 15-year-old, so I've got a lot of vinyl lying around the house, I can tell you.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. What was the first concert you ever went to?
That would be Elton John and Billy Joel.
Wow. Wow. I tell you what.
To be fair, I've only been to 2 concerts. The only other one I've been to was Motley Crue.
They're pull
Again, I'm very picky.
I tell you what, I seen Elton John in Australia not too long ago, a few years back. He was good. He was. I was one of these guys that the ticket wasn't for me, and somebody pulled out. So my wife said, "Do you want this ticket? Come up with me. Come to the concert." And I enjoyed it. I actually, really enjoyed it.
Oh, he was the quintessential showman of his time.
Mm-hmm.
He was just fantastic.
Fantastic. And Mike, last question I'll have for you. If I was to give you a first class ticket to anywhere in the world, where would you travel to? And it can be more than one destination.
Well, immediately I'd say I'd come back to Australia. It's a wonderful country.
Would you like to have a kind of longer time to look around, Strontium?
Well, I was here well, not here. I was there for about a month, but enough time is never enough in a place like Australia. It was just absolutely fantastic.
You should come just live here, mate. It's a lot of people do. It's so. Have you been? You've been here a couple of times now, though, haven't you?
Just once. But again, it was for a month.
Okay, cool.
I was in Sydney for about a week and a half or so, and then the rest of the time was spent in Canberra.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Dear audience, if you ever go to Canberra, they have an absolutely exquisite war museum.
Yes,
and it also has a really nice cafe where you can get the best meat pies you've ever put in your pie hole.
Yes, they do.
And you can also buy alcohol at that cafe in the war museum.
You can buy alcohol pretty much anywhere in Australia. You can go to the movies and drink alcohol. You can go anywhere.
I'll never forget the first time I went to Dan Murphy's. That liquor store was bigger than some of our grocery stores.
It is a national pastime down here, I must admit. So apart from Australia, is there anywhere else that you've kind of got on your bucket list?
Not really. Europe's become a bit of a shithole, and there's not really anywhere else I can think of I'd like to go.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it'd be nice to go see the beaches of Normandy and Paris and Berlin, but it's just not as safe as it used to be.
Yeah, I do enjoy going back, actually. My wife and I went back 3 years ago and done 12 countries in about 9 weeks.
Sorry, your voice cut out. What did you say?
My wife and I went back about 3 years ago, and we made it 12 countries in about 9 weeks. So that's the thing about Europe. It's very accessible, and you can move around to many countries very quickly. So.
Oh yeah, most of them are within walking distance of each other.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, Mr. Strontium, thank you so much for coming on Meet Your Neighbours. I know a lot of people will be thrilled that you've done the interview.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I will say I feel the audience might feel shortchanged if you don't ask me about my my vendetta against the trees.
Okay, well, what is the background to the tree vendetta, as you put it?
Well, it came about in the transition between Fallout 3 and Fallout 4. Because Fallout 3, there was a reasonable amount of trees, several medium-yield nuclear devices. So it's not necessarily the best environment for plant growth.
Yep.
Whereas in Fallout 4, in the game world, it really didn't feel like a nuke had gone off. It felt more like there had been, plague or something, and everybody had just died.
Mm-hmm.
Because there were just trees absolutely everywhere. and now I'll give you the pathology of this. This boils down to when I was a youngster, oh, you're fine. I'd grown up, watching post-apocalyptic fiction, like Damnation Alley, A Boy and His Dog, and those movies they filmed out in the desert because it was cheap and it kind of looked post-apocalyptic.
Yep.
So not a lot of trees. Then I watched the Kevin Costner film The Postman.
Yep.
And that was set in a world where like a plague had wiped out most of humanity. So it was lush and green, and there were trees everywhere. And it didn't feel like an apocalypse had occurred.
No.
And that just hit me. So when Fallout 4 came out, I was like, this doesn't look like a nuclear hellscape. This looks like New England in the wintertime.
So you spent most of the time in the glowing sea, then, I guess.
I really did like the glowing sea. I used a mod to build a house out there, and it had the best view in all of the Commonwealth, in my opinion. But even then, that's something as I don't really feel that, especially with Fallout 4, Bethesda doesn't put a lot of thought into their game world because, it's 200 years after the war. Most of those trees would have rotted into dust.
That's
and
right.
to be honest, most trees would have at least started to grow back,
Yeah.
as much as I hate to admit that. And also like downtown Boston, it didn't feel like a nuke had gone off.
Yeah.
Those buildings were way too intact. Most of them were like, enameled steel panels, which I'm sure with the salt air blowing in from Boston Harbor and the yearly hurricanes that would have occurred, nothing standing after 200 years.
Yep.
So I just really didn't get my post-apocalyptic rocks off with that game. And that's mainly the reason I resent it as much as I do.
And it's just got bigger and bigger and bigger, that whole thing about trees now, I think.
Well, yeah, I know a meme when I see it, so I embrace the meme. I am the anti-arboreal Mr. Strontium, and it's just my shtick. And you can't have shticks without trees.
Thank you so much for sharing that, man. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure.
And it's a good point to stop on, I think, because I'm about to drown in mucus by laughing. But anyway,
you do sound a bit short of breath.
So, guys, thank Mr. Strontium for coming on. He is a hilarious guy. He's a very big supporter of many of us in the community, and we love him to death. So, thank you so much, mate.
Well, thank you for having me. And to the audience, you're welcome.
And thanks for joining us on Meet Your Neighbours. We'll catch you next time on the channel. See ya.